Welcome to It's a Controls Problem, where we do precision guesswork based upon unreliable data given to us by those of questionable knowledge. I'm your host, Charles Johnson. All right, everyone, welcome to another show of It's a Controls Problem. I am your host, Charles Johnson, and I am here with the GOAT, my partner extraordinaire, Matthew Vanberg. Matthew, how are you?
I'm good.
And today we have a special guest. We have Mike MacMahon. How are you today?
I'm doing exceptionally well. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Well, first, thank you for coming, for joining us today. But to start, could you tell us about your journey into this field of engineering and building systems? Like, what initially drew you to this profession?
Quite honestly, an opportunity to change an industry. So I started small, right? So my background is traditionally IT, network architecture, cybersecurity. I worked in healthcare, finance, a number of different market spaces. And then I started my own consulting company and started a managed service provider. And back in around 2010, I was introduced to a real estate group that was trying to do something in the Detroit area. And they were going to connect buildings together so that they could have software that would oversee building controls. And they couldn't connect all the buildings together. So I was brought in and I said, oh, yeah, we could do this, this, and this, and we'll connect all the buildings together. And then you can do that. But why are you doing this? And that was really my first journey into building controls. And more importantly, smart and intelligent buildings. And as they explained it to me, I became more and more fascinated by it. And so when I finished the first 6 buildings, a couple of years went by and they decided to buy more properties and expand it. So I got invited back for another meeting. And they said, we have to figure out how we did this back in 2013. And this is now 2015. And I said, oh, yeah, I did that for you. So, we can expand this, no problem. What are you looking to accomplish? And they said, oh, now we're going to take not just building controls, but access control and all this other fun stuff. And I said, oh, yeah, no, you can put it all on one network. And I started to go to construction meetings and I started to be part of the design groups. And we wrote standards for them on how this should be done. Excuse me. And it really became apparent to me that the construction industry has been doing a lot of the same stuff for the last 20 years. And so here we are in 2015, 2016, and I'm seeing control spec submittals that come in that call for dot matrix printers and XP devices that are going to sit underneath somebody's desk. And I'm like, that's operationally, I have some concern having come from a formal IT background, right? So I'm all about let's build a data center and let's put a server in and have it the hosted application and have it managed and have change controls and change management and all this fun stuff. And when we started to write the standards for them, we realized, okay, this is going to be fundamentally changing. But then I noticed that there was a huge gap in cybersecurity. It didn't exist. Devices were going in based on how the integrator needed to put them in to get the job done, because it was more focused on functionality rather than how it was doing its job. And so little by little, we started to change that paradigm. As that relationship ended, and I went into another industry of security and started creating another company with a couple of other partners, I really wanted to get back into the built environment. And I realized there's a tremendous opportunity here because as smart tech increases to be adopted because the data becomes so valuable, that's going to create operational risk across the board. And because I have that background in cybersecurity, I understand the risk and the liability and the weight behind protecting your assets. Because if you're not protecting your assets, you're going to lose yep, you guessed it. And so I wanted to try to become involved in that. And that's where I found myself with Newcomb Boyd, because I was asking, who's writing the specs? Because that's the contract language that dictates what goes in and how it should be done. And I thought that would be a good place to start. And so I came into Newcomb Boyd about the very, very end of 2020, right in the very beginning of 21. So, that was in the grand old time of everybody working from home and doing all this fun stuff. And I embedded myself into the construction process. And at the same time, helped grew our intelligent buildings practice on consulting and design work, especially with integrated automation like the Div 25. and then wanted to branch out and establish cybersecurity as table stakes. And so I started working with other organizations like the Real Estate Cybersecurity Consortium and buildingcybersecurity.org, which is building a framework for everyone to get on board. And it leverages things from the Center for Internet Security, IEC 62443, which are great frameworks. One deals with computers, the other deals with industrial controls. And really, building controls are kind of an amalgamation of both, because we have servers, we have IT components, we have industrial components that are part of the controls that manipulate the physical world. And so cybersecurity just needs to be table stakes, and we've been able to foster that message. So that's kind of how I got here, was I wanted to be able to change the industry and draw awareness to it's not complicated to do cybersecurity. It just needs to have some minimum viable product worked around it and some basic cyber hygiene stuff. And that's the program that we created, and that's what we've been successfully working with our clients and making their environments more secure.
I always chuckle when I hear dot matrix, printers, because, obviously, you and I, and even Matthew, well, Matthew's a maniac kitty. We cut our teeth on dot matrix printers. And I still actually have to tell students how dot matrix printers worked, because there's a line printer in Niagara that you can use. So, which I think is, hilarious that we still haven't, and you can actually still get them today in a USB, regular USB format, which I thought was kind of interesting. Working for Newcomb Boyd now, are you in the office that's actually like right down the street from ECS, or are you in a different?
We're headquartered in Atlanta, but I operate out of Michigan.
Oh, okay, all right. So you are.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, I'm all over the place, wherever we need to go, because that's where our clients are. So we have offices in Raleigh, Charlotte, Jacksonville, Atlanta. We're looking to expand in other areas, but yeah, so that's been our primary bread and butter.
Okay. All right. Well, good. So working with Newcomb Boyd, obviously Newcomb Boyd has a long standing reputation. So what is it like working for a firm with such a rich history? And realistically, how has working for them, influence your approach to projects, if at?
Yeah, it's great, because now I understand the totem pole of construction, and that was a very big thing for me to be able to understand and learn, and to be able to strategize on how we're going to do this. So, in a traditional consulting engineering role, which is what Newcomb Boyd has been for over 100 years, they celebrated their centennial back in 2023, and they're evolving. They've seen the need to offer additional services beyond the technical, mechanical, electrical, plumbing that it was founded on. And so we've been able to evolve and bring that message to the marketplace. And a lot of our clients are seeing the value of that. We work direct with owners. We work direct with architects. We play a role in defining what those design North Stars are going to include and what they're going to be, because Newcomb Boyd has that reputation as trusted thought leaders. And so we're able to guide that construction process, not just with the idea of finishing and starting and finishing a project, but really it's the focus on operations in day two. That's really how we're being transformative as an organization, is we're evolving into that day two operation. So if we have, our engineers are designing these things, and we have technicians and engineers in the field that are operating them, and it's the amalgamation of technology and mechanicals that are truly our bread and butter, and we're able to bring that to the field. So on day two, if they're buying a piece of control software and they're setting this up to operate, whether it's just a building or a group of buildings on a campus or portfolio, we're able to bring that holistic view from soup to nuts all the way to the end in operations to help them use what they bought. Because all too often people are really good at buying solutions and hitting the easy button, and they spend X number of dollars on acquisition and implementation, and they forget about the day two. And so that's what allows us to actually really, really influence things.
That's actually really fascinating. And did you say bicentennial?
Centennial, sorry.
Oh, centennial. Okay. I was like, wow. But even then, just even a regular, I mean, just 100 years is amazing. I didn't realize they had been around for that long. Wow.
It's very, very rare nowadays, right, to see a company that has actually existed in the same format. That it's, we're a firm, so we have partners and principals, and then we have associates and senior associates and in different levels, and that has been pretty much since the inception. So it's actually really cool. It has that nice sense of kind of like granite, right? It's foundational, been around for a long time, and it's a trusted entity with a good reputation.
Okay. So was there a like looking back at your career, you've been in this industry for quite some time. Was there a project or an experience that stood out the most as challenging or rewarding to you? And what'd you learn from?
That's a really good question. They're all challenging to a certain degree. And what I really like is the aha moment. And so a lot of our work we do is, of course, design work, but we do a ton of consulting work. And that's really dealing with people and process, because technology is an enabler. People and process are really, at the end of the day, what it's all about, and how technology is going to help them. And so when I get to go in front of somebody and I have them realize, like, oh, you hear it's all about the data, get the data and you can do all kinds of things with it. And really, it's garbage, because if you get the data and you don't know what to do with it, you're basically spending money inappropriately. You're buying things that you're not going to use. You're not positioning yourself forward. So we've got a lot of projects where we consult with our clients first and get them around their strategies. Do you have sustainability goals? Do you have carbon reduction? Do you have reporting functionality within your stakeholder group that you are responsible for? And then there's the operation side of it. And what we end up seeing I had one client, it was a financial institution. This is a good example. They were proposing, they had all of these mandates from the board that they had to report on their operations and report reduce energy consumption across the board. And they're all over the country with their campuses. And we met with them and we said, okay, here's the design technology that we're going to propose to be able to pull the data and make your buildings just a little bit smarter than they are today. And they were relying on their IT group to be able to provide connectivity for that. Well, the IT group said, no, this is a feral cat. I'm not touching this. This is not coming on my network. I'm a financial institution. This is not going to work. And then we pointed out the danger of shadow IT, where now the facilities folks and operations folks have to rely on someone outside whose main job is to make the equipment functional, not provide a secure network for the operations. And so I was able to get in front of all of these, I think there were like 15 different stakeholder groups that were involved in these conversations, and be able to break down our message to each one of those stakeholders so that they saw the value in their language, their ears, right? So the C-suite is all about risk, liability, and cost. Operations is all about risk and liability. And then you had different reporting groups saying, I just want the data. I just need the information. And IT figuring out, okay, how do I accommodate and provide that connectivity to reduce the risk of someone else doing it and do it responsibly? And so we were able to lead an effort bringing all of those stakeholders together to change their policies and procedures on how they treated operational technology. And that's what we call it, is operational tech, because it's technology that operates a building. It manipulates or senses the physical environment. And so we had to teach them the difference and the nuances of how to do that, and built out an entire program with them over the course of a year. And now they're refreshing their headquarters facilities, their campus, and they're putting in intelligent VAVs and new control systems. And the onboarding process was seamless this time. So that's probably one of my proudest accomplishments, having come through and working in this industry, is because we are changing the industry one client at a time.
So how do you think, how hard is it to convince, users that it really is indeed time for a change? Like how much, maybe fight or resistance do you get during some of these conversations?
Oh, all the time. Resistance to change is natural to us. I had to move from a window seat to an aisle seat, and I was not happy about that. So like, I'm very played out, So yeah, no, it's really addressing what those needs, and it's really a lot of it's fear based, right? So having a little bit of empathy and understanding that, hey, this is we're going to introduce something here that you're going to have a benefit for, but at that point you're talking a concept, and some folks struggle with the concept, and it doesn't alleviate really a lot of fears. And so that's the critical piece that I recognize right away is the fear that they have. Where's this coming from? How is this? Why are they so resistant to change? And what I do find is a lot of failed attempts in the past, for whatever reason, right? We're really good at buying solutions, but we're not good at the follow-up. We're not good at sustaining it. It's like supporting a baby from 9 months to birth and then just expecting it to live on its own, right? And so when we propose these types of changes, we listen for, hey, what have you tried to do? Oh yeah, we tried that 5 years ago and it fell on its face. It was terrible. It was an awful experience. We spent $5 million and she had nothing to show for it. And so got fired and all this other stuff. And I'll just ask a couple of simple questions to find out the root cause of why that happened. And 9 times out of 10, the answer is we didn't plan beyond for day 2. And so if we can change that paradigm, we generally lead with that and we alleviate that fear, which then removes that barrier for implementation and adoption.
It's actually a really good, it's a good suggestion there, or a good comment. Like, it is one of those things where people are used to buying stuff, but don't necessarily understand that either A, they already need to know how to use it when they purchase it, or they just don't understand the capabilities of it and the power. Like, when training people in Niagara, right? Like some of the, or I'm teaching the basic concepts to a lot of people who have never even touched the system before. Mm-hmm. And so like, companies, come out and are like, well, they should be experts by now. After 4 days of instruction and trying to get through. Okay, sure. I don't agree with that, but I mean, I understand it. But yeah, I think some of that stuff is, I think that some of the stuff is natural, and I think it will eventually change over time. Because I've seen, something recently where someone was using one of our tools and they're like, well, I expected to do this. I'm like, no, it doesn't replace your job. You still need to do this portion of the job. It just tells you what's wrong. And now you need to go fix it.
That's exactly it, right? Yeah. It's that expectation. I saw this fancy widget during the demo and I expect it to operate that way. Oh, well, hold on. You actually have to do some work to populate that widget and to get that widget to work so that it's reporting correctly, but it doesn't fix it for you. It just tells you. And so you still have, that responsibility, right?
Yeah. Like the thing for me that I thought was quite interesting was, I just built a tool, and I don't care if I say it here on the podcast. I just built a tool that will actually auto-discover your BACnet network. It will discover the points underneath those devices and add them with the appropriate facets. Now, the thing that it doesn't do is that it doesn't change the name of the point. Whatever the point is read from the BACnet device is the name of the BACnet. So you still need to do some renaming. They're like, oh, well, I thought it would just rename it XYZ. Well, why would you think that? Like this has already saved you hours of time, and now you just need to make some name changes. That's what we're going to fight for. Okay. I don't really think that that's where you think it's going, but no, I definitely understand that for sure.
So yeah, and to your point, I went through Niagara training because for me, from my standpoint, as a network architect and engineer, I had to support a ton of stuff in the healthcare system, and we had everything under the sun. We would have devices dropped off that were being installed in an operating department that were an anesthesia cart. Oh, wow. And they're FDA certified. So you cannot change or modify this in any way. And I went and I looked at them and they said, yeah, we got 30 of these. We need to get them connected to the Wi-Fi network and blah, blah, blah. And they weren't connecting. And they supported an outdated protocol that even the manufacturer didn't support anymore because it had taken so long to get through FDA certification. They were running an outdated operating system And their Wi-Fi actually was just a module plugged into an external antenna that was shoved horizontally into a metal handle of the cart. And I was like, well, I don't know how you expect this thing to work, right? And so what I realized very quickly, I always thought network was at the top of the pyramid when it came to this stuff because everybody connected to you. What I didn't realize, it was a funnel. And stuff rolls downhill. So it's always the network fault. So in order to properly figure things out, I began my journey learning what I could about everything that could potentially connect to the network. And I did the same thing in my journey into buildings and smart technology. And so I said, oh, what is this? Oh, it's a controller. What does it do? It does this. Oh, cool. What is a Jace? Oh, yeah. All right. I got to go to class for this. And so I need to go get trained on how these things operate so that I can properly understand them and properly support them and properly, speak to them and where they are in the hierarchy of, intelligent design. And there's those little nuances. And the funny part you talk about with that discovery tool, that's a great thing to have, because we hear from a lot of our clients, I don't even know what I have, because the number one thing for cybersecurity is inventory. If you don't know what you have, you don't know what you're protecting. And for a lot of people in their portfolios and their campus and their buildings even, they lose track over time of changes, right? So that's where change management kind of comes into play. Or I just purchased a building. And so now I have to go through and discover and figure out what I have to do to make money off of it. I have to make it profitable, especially in the CRE space. And so that criticality of figuring out what you have is paramount to being able to move forward. I call it wayfinding. It's always looking backwards to see where you are to figure out where you're going to go with it. And that feeds into your budget. That feeds into everything that you have operationally.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it's important, I think, at times to understand the equipment itself. So, we're finding more and more, we're finding more and more people who are software engineers and whatnot trying to come in and learn the product, which I think is great, because especially from like an OT side, you kind of need to understand what's going on here, especially, as we start progressing with BACnet SC, right? Like BACnet SC now is becoming a very hot topic. And you and I were at the same Controls Con.
Yep.
And so, they talked about BACnet over SC quite a bit. And I have discussions, some people are like, well, is this on IT or is this OT? I'm like, well, it's a combination of both, them getting together and being able to, to figure it all out. And it takes us to come in as well and to provide our part of the expertise, in addition to. So, I think that's all. I think it's all, it's all really, these are all really great points as you're making. You were really insightful. I'm soaking up the information here. You may have just heard the click of the pen. I'm writing down in a notebook here pretty quickly some of the things that you're bringing. So I really am appreciating the insight that you're bringing. So let's kind of dive into the BAS aspect though. And so for those who might not be familiar, can you briefly explain what BAS security entails and why has it become such a critical area of focus?
Yeah, absolutely. So, it's really, you kind of touched on a point there about the number of people that are involved in certain things. And I've always said, it takes a village to build a building and maintain it. And you have to keep it from turning into a circus. And a lot of people are really good at saying, it's not my circus, not my monkeys. I'm not going to worry about it. And so, but it is your responsibility, right? And that's why I love, frameworks and things that help, like 6443. There's three real people involved in securing a building. There's the owner, who has to specify and own the ultimate liability, because if the stuff goes down and something happens, and I'll get into that in a minute, they're the ultimate. They have to pay the piper. There's the system integrator, the service people, the people that are on site doing the actual work. They play a huge role in this. And then there's the manufacturers, right?
Yep.
A few years ago, I sat in a briefing about a major product manufacturer that was making all these changes, and they were going to the cloud. And they told me all the cybersecurity stuff that they were starting to begin to design into their products. And At the very end, I said, well, that's really impressive. I'm very happy to hear that you guys are going down that roadmap. I just have one question. Do you have a training program to train the people in the field what that does and why they should turn it on? And there were crickets. There were just crickets everywhere, right? And so, if you don't start with making security your North Star, and I'll be honest, cybersecurity is, it's, some people call it witchcraft. There's all kinds of different things. There's phishing and some ransomware and all the malware and viruses and all this other fun stuff that happens. But really, at the end of the day, when I talk about basic cyber hygiene, especially in a building, it's specifying that you have to change default passwords, right? And so manufacturers like yourselves, you're taking that on and changing that paradigm where upon first login, you have to change the password. You have to provide a password, right? So that's great because now there's a system of checks and balances. I'm not relying on someone to change the default passwords. That's the first thing I look for. I've done a lot of penetration testing, and I recognize weaknesses and where to go, and I point those out to people because I think it's a true service. As a white hat type of person, it's invaluable to be able to do a tabletop exercise with real world data. One of my favorite things was dropping off a thumb drive in the lobby with Bobby's first birthday pics as a label. And that had code on it, and you shouldn't plug it into your machine. But who doesn't want Bobby's whoever to get his first birthday pics back?
Right.
And so that was my in, right? And so when we look at the built environment, we talk about introduction of that basic cyber hygiene. Privilege level is probably the second most important thing. Because all I have to do, and I just had a conversation with a chief security officer, oddly enough, of the healthcare system about controls cybersecurity. And what I told him was, I'm going to sit in your parking lot in the back, and I'm going to watch the trucks that pull up here. And, every service organization is kind enough to plaster their name all over the truck. So I know who's operating in this building. Now I'm going to go figure out how old your building is. And I guarantee you haven't touched any of your tech. But I do know that you need weather data, and you've probably connected it to a network somewhere to pull that in. So now you are no longer air-gapped, and it's probably unbeknownst to anybody in your company that's responsible for security. And so I'm going to find my way in, and I'm going to shut down your HVAC system and make your ORs stop working. Think about the liability.
Yes.
Right? That is
absolutely.
The translation of the virtual to the physical world in a majorly negative way. And it is totally feasible. It can happen at any point in time. So these are the types of examples I'm talking about. Like, it's very low-hanging fruit to tell somebody to change a password, to assign the appropriate privilege level to a device. And it's an IT concept, right? I can't have a server admin have access to the full server stack, because they could make one change and it could affect an entire group of servers that are put together in like a server farm. And I've heard these stories before where an engineer goes to make a change in a Niagara platform, and they didn't realize the privilege level they had, and they changed the platform across 9 facilities and took them down in the middle of the day, right? So yeah, there's that that's the type of, we talk about threats, all right? There's external threats, there's internal threats, and then there's the accidental internal threats. And I've seen all of them. I mean, hell, I've done it myself. I've accidentally tripped on a power cord that was powering a server rack in a data center and knocked out a whole bunch of stuff because I didn't realize that was providing temporary power while they were doing work. Needless to say, I was always escorted in that data center after that.
Can you explain to our audience, I've seen some articles recently where they talk about air-gapped or not air-gapped. Can you just kind of explain what that is?
Sure, absolutely. Air-gapped is, you have a Wi-Fi network in your house and you connected a bunch of smart technology to it and you unplugged the internet. So you are no longer part of a larger network. You are kind of by yourself. Or you're operating independently. So in a really good case, an emergency generator with a transfer switch. Even though most of those operate air-gapped, in other words, they're not connected to anything else, you would have to physically connect a computer to it in order to program it. you think you're safe. Until I get into your supply chain and I write a piece of code that goes into your firmware that tells the transfer switch to do something other than transfer when it's activated. And that's a real mode of attack. That's been done. Air gapping is a method of keeping things physically separate, but you could still have a network together. So in other words, you could have all your BAS controls connected physically to its own network within a building and not connected to anything else. It's not connected to lighting control. It's not connected to your elevators, not connected to your security systems. It's definitely not connected to a higher level software application. It just runs on its own. Now, on a non-air gap network, that's where things can talk to each other. And to your point, that's where BACnet SC plays a role, because what we see is, I don't understand how this stuff talks. I'm just going to give it its own virtual network on our equipment and put all of this equipment in that network. And now my lighting control can see my HVAC control. My cameras are in that network. My elevators are in that network. I have all of these things in one network and they can all see each other. Now, are they supposed to talk to each other? No, but they can. And BACnet SC, what that does is it hides and encrypts that communication between the endpoints for, like, say, HVAC, between, say, a BAS controller and the BAS server that's running the software and allowing command and control and monitoring. It encrypts that communication. So anything else that happened to be on that network would not be able to talk or intercept or see those things. Again, that's another surface threat attack area, because I could go in and plug into any network port in any closet and do a discovery, and I could see all of those systems at once and do packet captures on them. So I can see the commands that are being sent back and forth between those devices, the frequency and stuff. Or I don't even have to plug into a network switch. I could go to an exterior camera mounted on a wall in a garage and just unplug the camera and plug myself in. And now, boom, Bob's your uncle. I'm on your network and I'm doing all kinds of mischievousness. And that's where part of the vulnerability comes in, the older installations that are out there in the world right now. If you go to shodan.io and just type in BACnet, it's astounding what comes up. And it will literally read, so-and-so school system in this county in this state. And again, a lot of them have default credentials in them. So I can just log right into it, because all it takes is a quick Google search and I can figure out what the default credential is for any of that equipment. And so air gapping is what people think they have. But then on a BAS system, if I needed weather data to be able to better control and have input on how I'm operating my building from a heating and cooling perspective, they're going to go in and plug into a cable modem, or they're going to plug into another network that's there so they can get out to the website that's going to pull that data. And now you've compromised that air gap network. So you think you're safe, and people aren't auditing this. So they don't know that that's actually happening. The other problem with air gap networks is that it's labor intensive. And I know the military is a big believer in air gapped everything for control. So they'd rather send a person with a laptop out on the base to drive a Jeep over and go manipulate the software out there on whatever the widgets are that are air gapped in that particular space. And you don't get the advantages of integration. So taking lighting occupancy sensors to detect who's in a space so that you can more efficiently heat and cool your space with that information in real time. But that would never happen in an air gap system. The lighting control will just not be allowed to talk to the HVAC. So therefore, now the HVAC has to go put in their own sensors. So now you've got duplicate sensors right next to each other, basically doing the same thing, but it doubles the cost. And now you can't pull that data out to be able to populate, whatever financial software that you're using or space utilization. And you really end up losing out in an air gap system. So there are ways and methodologies to be able to tie these systems together in a secured network and do it in a very simple way that it's not overly complicated.
Okay. So no, I think that's a great explanation. And by the way, when I do my security lecture, which normally is either the closer to the end of today, which is Wednesday, for people if you're wondering what day is today, or first thing like Thursday morning. And so I do show people Shodan.io. Now I don't put in BACnet. I just put in Tritium, so they can see that. But today we actually found in our time going through there, we found a site that is using a server, quote unquote server, as Windows 7. Not only that, they're using all unsecure ports.
Oof.
Now, luckily, obviously, it has its own, it's a computer and not a Jace, right? So it's not like we could use default username and passwords there, but like maybe then you take Showdown.io and see if, like, let's say like Microsoft VPN, right? Like I think that's port like 3389, like, taking some of that, see if that's available, right? Like, and now seeing if some of that's available, it's easy, right? Like, so a lot of people don't understand how they really need to pay attention to cybersecurity when it comes to that, and what people can do if you damage the system. Like, imagine the millions of dollars of equipment in a data center, and imagine if someone got in there and shut down chillers for, let's say, 15 minutes.
Oh, easily,
right? Like how damaging can that be?
And the bigger thing is, if you think about the construction process of how long it takes to implement the sequence of operations and to program the controls technology with that, then test it, and then commission it and bring it all the way forward into operations, it's a really long time. So if you don't implement, and cybersecurity also includes disaster recovery and backups. So if you're not backing up your controller software, if you're not backing up your configurations, whenever you make a change, and that somehow gets compromised where it gets deleted, you basically got to rebuild all of that.
Yep. Absolutely. So without giving out confidential information, can you kind of share a situation where robust BAS security measures truly made a difference in a project for a client you had?
Oh, absolutely. So the financial client that I had implemented, what I told them was, it's all about visibility, right? And so it goes back to my mantra that I've always had is smart buildings don't make your building smart. They make you smart about your building because they provide visibility and insight. And with that can come command and control. That's where the gotcha is, right? So if I'm just looking at something, no harm, no foul, right? You go to the museum, you look at the art on the wall, it's cool. The second you touch it, that's where it becomes a problem. And so if your software package has the ability, like a BAS, to do the controlling pieces of it, that creates the vulnerability. So I talked to them about providing visibility to this group that is now responsible for, we call it an OT team. And what we did was we had the facilities folks and some IT folks come together as a group and get to know each other, start speaking the same language, and understand that I can't take a heavy software platform that's made for IT scanning, like Rapid7 or something like that, and scan some of these outdated and older controllers that were existing because, I mean, honestly, they have the CPU power of a 1980s calculator. In fact, I think in the 90s, my TI-84 had more CPU utilization. So if I were to aggressively scan it for vulnerabilities, I can just knock it right out. And if that thing performed a critical function, again, this becomes an internal threat. And I've seen this happen over and over again. I've watched somebody lose their central energy plant because IT decided to do a full scan and an aggressive scan, and it just took out all the controllers at the site. But this financial client, we went through a process and walked them through a number of options. They ended up purchasing a platform that is OT specific that would give them the insights and capture passive traffic, and then start building these what we call flows. And so a flow is a method or process that you can track and document of interactions between devices. So if I have a BAS server that's going to pull all of the controllers on a network every 15 minutes, that's a flow. You can also have a responsive flow where if a controller detects a fault in a piece of equipment, it's going to report that back up to the BAS server. The BAS server is then going to email or send some type of alert to the engineer. Hey, this is happening, right? Those are all flows. And so what the software did was it started over time to learn how the flows are communicating and how they should be communicating. And we did that across physical security, so access control systems that were IP-enabled, cameras, network video recorders, lighting control systems, HVAC controllers, everything that operated the building. And all of a sudden, they started seeing alerts from their enterprise network trying to initiate flows to devices on their OT network and cross-contamination from a camera to an HVAC controller. I think they had Jaces at the time. And so they were alerted that there was something going on here that was weird. And what the really cool thing was is that they were able to figure out that there was an active penetration attempt occurring from a lobby by someone using wireless, and they were able to use the wireless system to map where they were in the building because the IP range that they were using was a wireless subnet to this location. And then they used the triangulation of the wireless system to identify exactly who it was. And it was just someone sitting in the lobby doing some scans, trying to figure out how to talk to things. But they found that because of this flow visibility that they had that they never would have had before. And that could have been catastrophic.
Oh, wow. It's amazing sometimes that people don't understand like how close to the brink of disaster they really are. And it's like, it's like a baby, right? Like, we save them from falling or whatever, and they may never know the difference, right? Because they don't, like, we're the ones that are protected.
Yeah.
But they just don't understand, the true danger they may have been in, and all for them is just always right. I think some of the same things kind of really apply here. Like I try to tell people, hey, don't put your Jace on a public IP. Just don't. Like, for the love of God, don't be so. Like, please don't do that. I'm like, I'm still not even really a big fan of port forwarding. Like, I get it. Like, I do.
Oh yeah, like you said with 3389 RDP, right? That's remote desktop protocol. I see that when I do my network scan. I'm like, ooh, I'm getting into something I shouldn't.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Like, it's one of those where it's like, what do you do? And even like with trying to teach people like IT departments, you're like, hey, look, if we're going to log into a VPN, that's great that we're logged into a VPN, but could you put us on our own VLAN instead of being immersed in your whole other network, right? Because think about the target data breach, right? The target data breach, someone got in to a laptop which was connected to the target VPN. And I'm a conspiracy theorist. I kind of think that was an inside job. Because I guess for me, my question I have for that particular thing is, how did the hacker know specifically that laptop connected to the target VPN and that VPN was connected the higher, to pretty much the entire network? And so like, I'm able to go ahead and access stuff. Like, I guess, I get it's just the conspiracy theory, but like, there's
no. It's a true thing. The way you're going with that is the right mindset to have. You need to be a little bit paranoid about, cybersecurity because everyone is out to get you, right? And if it's true, then you're not wrong. In that particular instance, it comes to what I call the town bicycle theory, where if I'm in a controlled environment and I allow people to bring in their own devices and I'm not managing those, then that poses a huge risk. So if I'm sitting there on a laptop and I'm going to places and doing things I shouldn't be, then I'm exposing my device to viruses and malware. And that's how it works. Like, those are targets of opportunity. And I use the term target, but it really is a target of opportunity to infect a laptop with something that installed a keylogger. But more importantly, it was watching the traffic from the laptop. It was just automatically reporting what it was doing. That's where the visibility came from. Oh, they connected to VPN. Oh, what are they doing here? Oh, I'm going to activate my little package here to install a keylogger. So now I can capture their passwords. And, who knows what they were looking up that they downloaded or they opened and allowed to run that executable that installed this stuff. And so that's where this vulnerability comes from. So now they get connected to the VPN. They get compromised. The hacker has the credentials to get connected to the VPN. The architecture at the store is a flat network that included everything. Not only that, but it had a available route to hop to the data center where not only the the point of sale systems are locally, but now the servers that are processing a lot of that data. And so from one to the other, and the idea of these types of infiltrations is you're a spider in a web, right? When we talk about some of our red team exercises in the U.S. government, and what we're really looking at doing, and they do it to us and we do it to them, is you figure out where you can get in, and then you just sit and you watch. It's not active hacking. It's not like you're going to just jump in and go do stuff. You got to check it out first. You have to get the lay of the land. You're doing a lot of reconnaissance. And then when the time comes, you pull the trigger and you shut it down. And so essentially, that's how they got in through that system by an HVAC contractor, right? And it's an education thing. And then they sat there for 2 years collecting data. And there's a number of stories that are out there like that. But that's the modus operandi. That's why I preach this stuff, and I try to raise awareness of, taking a very simple approach of just keeping your antivirus software up to date, at least loaded on your laptop. And then what are the methods of control that you can employ? Because everybody should be used to this, changing their passwords, basic cyber hygiene stuff. I get messages all the time from Google Chrome that says, hey, you logged in and we noticed that this password was in a compromised list that became available for us, right? Because they sell all this stuff on the dark web.
Mm-hmm.
And you should change it right now. And I do. There's websites like Have I Been Pwned?
Yes.
Right, that you can type in your email address, and that is literally combing through results from a dark web search to see if your email shows up anywhere in a release. Look at United Health that just happened, 149 million records that were out there. And I'm pretty sure somewhere in my career history over 30 years, I worked for somewhere that used United Health and probably has some of my information out there. It's just the nature of the beast. So it's all about how you kind of stay aware of how to protect yourself, but it's not in an overly complicated nature. But in this environment, the results could be pretty extreme.
Yeah, absolutely. No, you're right. The devastation that can happen, is astounding. But yeah, those are some things I do ask, like, man, like, how did that, like, why? We had a person on our podcast that would say, but why? And, but why really, really is not one of those things I say all the time, like, but why? One thing that I think that you bring to light is what, you definitely have seen a lot of things that could lead to catastrophe. So for our listeners who might be building owners, facility managers, or even IT professionals, what do you think is the single most important takeaway you'd like for them to have about BAS security?
The first thing is really knowing what you have. And having somebody as a trusted advisor that understands the security piece. Are you actually connecting? Are you air gapped? Are you truly air gapped? Right. And that's just tracking wires, and anybody can do that. It's really the takeaway is, do you want to be secure? Do you understand the liability if you're not? And then if the answer is no, I don't, then you need to take education and ownership of that. We start to see in the cybersecurity industry overall that they would hire a chief information security officer. That's a C-level position, usually a VP. And talk about not my monkey, not my circus. Everything is the CIO's fault. In fact, they were trying to pass legislation not too long ago about being able to criminally go after a CISO if there was an event of a breach where it was a catastrophic release of information. But the problem is it takes a village. And so we're seeing CIOs and CEOs starting to take ownership of setting cybersecurity as a North Star, because it is just table stakes now. If you want to maintain your operation, if you want to get insurance, I help our firm with that. we have a cybersecurity attestation that we have to fill out for our liability insurance, our professional liability insurance, and operational insurance. And it basically says, here's a list of things. Do you do them? And we do. We do training. We do, and then, some of them even get in more granular, like how often do you do training? How do you do this? So I think, the biggest thing is educate yourself first on what your knowledge is. If you're lacking the knowledge, there are companies out there that are able to help you. And if you're on a project and cybersecurity isn't brought up, and if you're like a system integrator, it works all the way around. When I'm on a project, back when I had one of my companies, I was doing implementations, and no one brought up cybersecurity requirements. Well, then I raised my hand. And it works both ways on all sides, all around the table. If you don't hear the conversation being had, then it's not being considered, and it's worth bringing up. And there are companies out there that can help with educating people, not just on the tactical pieces of like, don't click that email because it's a phishing email, but really on more of like the strategy, what the real pros and cons are. And I hope, getting the message out through, programs like yours, people will understand the risk and the liability. And it's always like, where do I start? And again, that's where major organizations come into play, like the RECC or buildingcybersecurity.org and a number of other ones. They have a lot of information out there that's readily available that people can use to self-educate. And I used to joke all the time, like everybody thought I was really smart because I knew a lot of stuff. Well, no, I just knew how to search Google. Right. And it's at your fingertips. It really, truly is. And so that would be the message I would take is, be aware. Do you consider it a problem? What do you know about it? And then what are the right resources to go after to help you with that? And find the partners to work with that understand your risk and are willing to help you mitigate it.
So let's say I'm a BAS contractor and I have a customer that has no intention of getting remote access to the site. They're like, yeah, our IT department doesn't want, one-on-one there. And I'm not going to spend money to, I'm not going to spend money on like a Comcast or an AT&T line separate here. Can you get me some kind of remote access and, you can bill me in the service contract? Like what kind of system would you, what kind of, router or like Tosi box, some other kind of, like VPN stuff infrastructure, do you think that a BAS, that would be worth looking at from a BAS perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a number of different products that are out there right now. Tosi box is one, Neve is another one. And I'm not looking for VPNs. And I'm not looking to just plug in a cellular modem to a piece of equipment so I can gain access that way through a simple VPN. I just 2 years ago did a post analysis for a building automation system that was compromised with ransomware. And it was through a cellular modem provided by a contractor to allow for remote access that ended up being the gateway for allowing that to happen. And that resulted in millions of dollars. It completely shut everything down. Major compromise. So when you're looking for a solution like that to be able to provide it, and I'll be quite honest with you, for system integrators and contractors, that is actually a business opportunity. Because you can go and buy these pieces of equipment that have zero trust. And zero trust remote access is a very simple concept where if I use a traditional VPN to get access to a network, I am logging in probably with just a username and a password. Probably doesn't have multi-factor where, it sends a text to my phone and then after I enter my username and password, I enter in the code. I do that all the time. As soon as I see multi-factor or MFA, I enable it as soon as I can. And every time I log in to book my hotel at Marriott, it says, identify yourself. I'm going to text you a code. Type in this code to verify your identity. I think that's great. Very simple step. There are solutions being built out there like those that we mentioned that are incorporating this concept of zero trust over remote access. Once I'm in, I can see everything. And it's a very weak gate that you're putting. It's really a screen, to be honest with you. It's not even made of metal. It's just, made of whatever makes up screens. And Zero Trust, though, on the other hand, leverages a different relations set. And what that means is it discovers devices that are on the network. So that's number one, right? Like discovery. Now I know what I have. And then it assigns a human an identity. A device has an identity. And then an administrator can set the privilege level of how they're allowed to interact with that device. And that's just to talk to it, right? So, most of the controllers and everything, they have port 80 or HTTP, which is unencrypted communication between your browser and that device. HTTPS, which every time you log in, go to your bank, you're going to see this little lock in your browser, depending on your browser. That means it's encrypted. That means anything that you type into your browser is encrypted all the way to whatever application that you're accessing. And then, of course, on the device itself, you can set those privilege levels on what you're able to look or manipulate. But Zero Trust remote access is the really cool piece, because you can put a gateway on site. You can connect it to a cellular modem. You can connect it to another internet connection. But that Zero Trust piece is really the defining technology that creates what we call micro access. And so when we talked about segmentation earlier, and creating segmented networks for each of the technologies, these types of devices create relationships and then allow for micro interactions. So in other words, I'm not going to allow Matthew to talk to a controller on my network over port 80 or have unencrypted traffic pass back and forth between them. I'm going to make sure that it's encrypted. And so now I am a value add to my client. I am bringing that as a solution, and I can offer it to manage. Potentially, if you grow it right, you can offer it to manage other vendors that need access, right? So if you're the HVAC controller, you could bring in a Zero Trust platform, which isn't expensive. The cost of entry is very low, and you can go to places that will teach you how to use the product and become an administrator. You can get certified in it, or you can just learn how to use it. But you could potentially sell it for remote access to other vendors, right? Now, the lighting control vendor doesn't have to roll a truck. They could use the service that you're already providing through Zero Trust. You can set them up with an account. They could pay you for it, and then they get access to their system. Because again, it's identity based. It's taking that lighting controller and making a relationship to the human that's going to be accessing it. And there's a lot of opportunity there. So I think being able to provide your remote access, if you follow Zero Trust rather than just traditional VPNs, you're really adding value and not risk to your clients.
What I think is interesting about that is that I think for the BAS contractors that are neophytes, it providing that kind of level of access, I think that you gave such a great answer. That it doesn't need to be, it doesn't, there are things that they can easily do now to start implementing. And I think that obviously the more that we get into, this whole cybersecurity and cyber hygiene, that, we do need to really now, have a good fundamental understanding of how IT and OT networks, or how how they need to think. So, I think that overall it is a great, I think overall, you gave a really great answer.
Thank you. And we're going to get there. This is an evolution. When I first started down this journey, I was comparing the industry change to an aircraft carrier turning, until I saw one. Those giant things can whip about into the wind and launch their planes in like 2 seconds. But what I realized is the industry is really more like a container ship. Making that trek and just move it on forward, and everybody's on board, and we're all moving in the direction that we need to. But in order to change direction, you can only turn so many degrees every so many minutes, and we're getting that ship to turn around and do things in a different way. But it is going to take time, and it's going to take awareness and adoption, and it's going to take people asking for it. Right? Because, and if you monetize the ask, right? If it's something that I can make money off doing, and you see this all the time, right? In software development, people come back with feature set suggestions. And if you get enough of those requests as a developer, you're like, yeah, okay, I can see this because I got enough people in my existing client base that want this change. Or I can actually, this is a really good idea, and I can monetize this and add it as a feature that improves my sales. And, so the more people that are aware to ask the questions, the more the industry is going to answer. And, I'm just happy to be part of that journey and have folks like yourself putting this message out there and providing the platforms and the insight through your listener base to make that happen.
Yeah, I think it's really important to spread the word as much as possible. We've had a few people on to talk about like cybersecurity and cyber hygiene. What do you? I wanted to shift gears here. Just a question here. When it comes to AI and large language models, obviously we know that we have, I like to call it ChatGPT, ChatGPT and Gemini and stuff like that. I think that there is a concern that when people are starting to, learn, especially like, obviously the term vibe coding, right? So we've got people that want to be quote unquote developers, and they are, they're putting in, maybe private API into these, into like, ChatGPT, Gemini. There's a concern that some of that could become public domain from that. What are your thoughts on something like that, Brenham?
Always be careful of what you put out anywhere. You really have to be mindful. You see it all the time with the evolution of social media and what people are willing to post about their lives online, and the tragic consequences that can come from that. I'm a pretty private person. I've always lived that way. I don't really participate. I use Facebook really for marketplace, and occasionally see how my cousins are doing, outside the state that I live in. But I'm not posting on any of that stuff. I don't put a lot of my life out there. I love the people that do and say, "Hey, we're on vacation." Yeah, that's not a good idea. We're not home right now.
Yeah, if you come here, we will assure you that someone will be there, even though I've taken a picture that I'm 3,000 miles away.
Exactly, and it's that thing of unintended consequences. So when you're using those types of tools as they're getting developed, that is a real concern. We actually internally within our group developed a guideline for the firm, not a policy, but a guideline on how to use those tools effectively and safely. Being mindful of what information that you could share out there that isn't including client data, because confidentiality is a huge piece of the business, right? And you can populate, you can have it work with spreadsheets. Copilot's a great example of that, with its integration with Microsoft in all of its Office products. And we have particular licensing that enables that functionality. And I always have Copilot, asking how it can help me. And I ask the question, what does it know about what I'm doing? Right? Like if I'm creating a spreadsheet that's going to do some specific calculations that are my intellectual property, I'm very concerned about that getting out in the wild, right? Because that's going to cost me money in the long term. It's that use of technology and those unintended consequences. Now, as long as you're conscious about what you're using and how you're using it, you can't really do anything about those people that are plugging in those APIs and doing those things. But you can by not contributing directly or irresponsibly to those things that can cause a breach. Because AI is here to stay. I mean, it's getting in, and there are so many different things that are getting into the way that we operate and function and use our daily life. And I saw on LinkedIn and somebody added me. Hey, Mike, the AI is going to replace a consultant. Have you been replaced yet? Right? And I'm like, no, not yet. No, that's not a thing yet. But we do see the ability, and I've watched I'm a tech dork, so I'm into everything tech. And I was a big adopter of that in the early stages. And I've been blown away by the development of its capabilities. Because in the beginning, it always had to be proofread. It didn't quote the right sources for stuff. I'm a big fan of Wikipedia. I will literally lose 2 hours of my life because I looked up one thing and then I started clicking on all the links that were associated with the article I was reading. The next thing I know, it's 2 hours later. AI is providing that in the different ways that they're creating these tools around AI. You can create visual representations of concepts that we talk about in intelligent buildings. You can have obviously everybody knows the verbiage piece. I particularly like it to when I integrate with or interact with Gemini, I tell it to be snarky to me. And that's a lot of fun when I ask it a question. And but those are, those tools are here to stay, and they're only going to get better, and they're only going to get smarter, and they're going to make people work more efficiently. We just proposed developing an internal tool to help us with our stuff, and I can't wait to see how it turns out. And I can give you guys more detail on that maybe at a later day once I'm a little further in development for it.
Sure.
But it's going to help all of us in the firm understand what we all do. Because one of the things that I saw when I was in IT is the silo effect, right? I'm only going to know my stuff, and I'm only going to, that's all I can know because it's so much. And so you had server people, desktop people, application people, but like 50 different application people. You had a network guy, you had a WAN guy, a LAN guy, a wireless guy, local area network, wide area network, And so they were all great at what they did, but not really good at working together. So if you had a problem, you had to talk to like 10 different people to try to have them come together to figure out what the answer was. And when we look at the build environment, we have these specialists, we have these people. And I think I see what a lot happens too is they all have pieces of the puzzle or pieces of the answer. But not all things solve for all things, or not some things don't solve for all things. And AI is really going to kind of come into play very, very quickly with designing. It already is. We can take a look at analyzing and optimizing, right? Like Facile AI. They just won a Digi Award at Realcomm and IBCOM this year at their work at a university out in California, where they were able to reduce, I think it was their electrical consumption by like 200 kilowatts.
Yep.
And right, so we're already starting to see its effect, because what AI does is it needs data, but more importantly, it needs historical data and current data. And from there, it can infer certain settings that weren't immediately obvious. Now, if they have a human do that, could you have a human do it? Absolutely. We do it all the time. That's how we evolve our technology. We take a look at what we've done in the past and how can we make it more efficient, or how can we make the widget do a new thing, teach an old dog a new trick. And AI can do that at a cycle every second of every day that a human can't, right? We need a break. It's 8 hours. I'm done. 10, 12 hours. I'm done. And I got to walk away from it. So that's the power and the transformative nature of it. And it comes with a lot of responsibility in terms of the use, whether it's casual or purposeful.
Yep. No, I think that's I think that's very very well put. For me, what's really important to understand is I want to use it as a I want to make it known as a tool to use rather than a crutch. And that's what I'm really trying to kind of beat into some people right now. I feel that I think there's more reliance on it right now than I think I feel comfortable with personally. And not that I think that it's a bad thing at all, but I mean, a bad thing overall, but I feel like you should be able to at least have a good understanding of the fundamentals before knowing what you're getting into, right? And I think that's actually kind of the whole point, even with cybersecurity, understanding the product that you're using and power up that it becomes.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Because it comes down to responsibility. At the end of the day, you need to be responsible in everything that you do. Even interactions with different people. You might make a flippant comment and in a sarcastic way that you thought was funny, but you could really damage somebody with that. You can knock out their confidence, right? And you're not even aware that that happened. And so, yeah, casuality and casualness go hand in hand. You can, through your casualness, you can create some casualties.
Yep, absolutely. So last question I have for you, and I ask most people here. I know that you've dealt more with the, with the security side, but is there a BAS product that you've worked with that you kind of like? Yeah, I really like the cut of their gin.
Yeah, I like them all, to be quite honest with you. I like what LinkSpring's bringing to the table, Distec. I like a lot of the control systems that are out there. I like the next evolution of Tritium. I think it's fantastic. I think the way that they're changing the interaction and the incorporation of the different language that makes up its programming is going to be paramount. And I'm fairly agnostic, honestly, when it comes to controls. I've been exposed to a lot of them, and a lot of them have their pros and cons. But I think those are probably the upper limit of what I would expect to have spec'd in a controls design.
Okay.
And I got exposed to it, like you mentioned, ControlsCon. That gave me a really good example. I think they did a good job of bringing all the major manufacturers up there and giving them the ability to talk about the product line and introduce like a lot of what they're working on and their future thinking of things. And that's when I really became enamored with us.
Yeah, I think that's that's a very safe answer, which is fine. No judgment here. We're usually hearing, one of them that you mentioned is usually the forerunner, but yeah, I do think that a lot of them bring their unique perspective to the table. Distec's, continuing growth of their controls line, especially now they're using AI for a people counter or as part of it. We're trying to look into ways that AI can help us. Tritium is looking into ways that AI can help it as well. Code Labs is already starting to use it too.
Yep.
So a lot of people are embracing it, and I think in some cases it will help educate. I think still for me, I still kind of want people to be like, yeah, it's still good to have that knowledge, but it can be an education tool if that's what you're intending. I think some people some people I see kind of take it, just pawn stuff as their own. Like, here's what I made. I'm like, no, here's what you said you wanted to be made. Here's what AI made.
Yeah.
That kind of, so.
Well, yeah, even with LinkSpring's product offerings between the Genesis and Onyx, there's that evolution visible, right? It's the bridging of those product lines that allow you to stay present in the marketplace. But it's also the evolution that shows why you should stay with us, right? Like that's what I look for. I can make MSTP controllers all day long, right? And yes, I can run MSTP wire throughout an entire facility and have that visibility and control into these things. But really, what are you doing for the next level, right? Like, are you containerizing your controller so I can add other software packages to it? Are you securing your communications, right? Like you talked about with SC. And those are the things that I really look for in the companies that truly are bringing value.
Yeah, containerization is definitely a huge buzzword too. There are some. I think there's some really good uses for containers. I don't know if I'm convinced that containerized Niagara is going to be a real solution, but I need to play with containerized Niagara a little more before I really say, yeah, I want this, or no, I don't want it. I grew up in the days of VMware, right? And you did too, right? So one thing I do like about containers is the call to home, right? That you have to be able to ping it. If not, okay, well then do whatever. But I think they are easier to spin up than a VM. is, in my opinion. So there are good advantages about it. And I think being able to put different applications on top of the controller that you already have, I think provides a unique feel for the ultimate customer experience.
Yeah, because you've got compute at the edge at that point, right? Data has weight. And so you have to pay money on transport technology, and storage.
Yep.
And, it goes back to the earlier part of the conversation where we were talking about, just give me the data. I can't tell you how many times I work with people and I'm doing the programming, programming phase of capturing what their requirements are so that it can be implemented. And I'm like, what do you want for alerts? They're like, give me everything. And I just start laughing. I'm like, no. Because if I give you all the alerts, you're going to lose your mind.
Yep. Oh, yeah. Then they're like, why did you send me so many? Because you told me to. Like, I'm literally doing what you're asking. And now you don't like having what you've asked for.
Yeah.
So sometimes I'd rather have someone tell me, give me more than you gave me too much. So
I'd rather, because you don't know what to ask for, right? I just recently met with another company and I walked their solution center and they said, what would you like to see first? And I said, well, let's start with a nickel tour because I don't know what you have to offer. So feed me something to get started, some amuse-bouche, if you will, to whet my appetite. And then I can say, oh, let's dig into this a little bit more in detail.
Yeah.
Right.
Absolutely. Well, that's all we have for this episode. Remember to stay curious and be prepared for the threat landscape. Until next time, I'm Charles.
And I'm Matthew.
And this has been It's a Controls Problem. Sorry, I actually hit the mute button on my